Hello friends, Charlotte here from Enriching Environments and welcome to the Montessori Mission, a unique podcast series celebrating the joy and diversity of Montessori in lots of different settings around the world. Today I am so thrilled to have with me Aziza Osman, who is the founder of Montiplay. And we are really lucky, or I'm really lucky, as Aziza is just down the road from me in Dubai. We first met 18 months ago here in Dubai, and we've become firm friends since. And Aziza can really be credited with creating this beautiful Montessori community here in Dubai of like-minded educators and parents, and she's bringing the joy of Montessori into people's homes. When I first came to Dubai 6 years ago, I couldn't find a Montessori community. Olivia was only 7 months old, and I was really frustrated. I couldn't find any other Montessori parents or educators. And what Aziza has done in the past 2 years, 18 months, is really created this nurturing community, and so needed here in the Middle East. So wonderful to have a champion for Montessori in the Arab world who's really bringing Montessori to the forefront of conversations here. So I'm so glad Aziza has agreed to join me here today for the Montessori Mission. 10 questions, 10 Montessorians, 10 perspectives in 10 communities. And before Montiplay, she spent 10 years in designing solutions to provide access to education using technology. And I'm pretty sure that all of that experience has been integral to her work at Montiplay and how that all came about. So, Aziza, we would all love to hear about how you founded Montiplay, how it came about, and the beautiful work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, for the introduction. I'm humbled. I'll explain a little bit about Multiplay before we go into the 10 questions, which are much more interesting. So Multiplay is a passion project of mine, and it is also my life's mission. It is the embodiment of my purposefulness. So in a nutshell, I started Multiplay to fulfill a need that I had, not only as a mother, but as a human being. I grew up in Europe, but I'm originally Syrian from the Arab world. And very early on as a child, I saw that people look differently at each other because of their background, because of their academic qualifications or their social status. And I figured that there might be something we're missing in the Arab world that makes the Western world or the outside world look at us that way. And I thought I would love to play a role in advancing people, whether it's Arabs or any marginalized communities worldwide, to be able to provide them the opportunities that the first world had, and not to be referred to as the third world country or that have third world or underprivileged capacities, because we do have so much potential. And so I grew up with that mission. And throughout my work in human development, I wanted to do exactly that, provide access to education for marginalized communities and youth. We did so with refugee children from the Arab world by providing them with scholarships to go and study in top universities worldwide. We also opened refugee centers in Lebanon for refugee children, Syrian refugee children, so that we could eradicate illiteracy and give them a chance at life. And throughout my experience, I kept notes and I kept observing at what really can amplify the factors of success. How do we ensure that these marginalized children and youth do have a better life? And time again, we would arrive at early childhood education. I then went on to study public administration and specialize in education policy. And I discovered that most nations around the world, when they wanted to invest in their human capital, they would invest in early childhood education. And so I put that as a mental note and wanted to provide early childhood education for marginalized children and youth. And then I became a mother myself. And when that happened, I realized more and more that there are barriers to providing early childhood education, especially when it's not a government initiative, when it's not government funded. How do we enter the homes of all families around the world and provide them with the resources and knowledge they need so they can become early childhood educators? And to start this path and this mission, I needed to educate myself on what is the best way, the best method that we could provide these families at home. And with lots of research and books, I would arrive at Montessori as the chosen method, as the holistic approach to life that could educate parents and enter every family at home to provide them with the best knowledge and resources they need during their child's most formative years in life. And so I started researching on how I could apply Montessori at home with my own daughter, and become my own beneficiary for the project. And it wasn't as easy to access the knowledge and resources that I needed. It wasn't as easy to find the materials, the knowledge, the know-how, and most importantly, the presentations I needed to complete my knowledge in Montessori. I found it to be inaccessible to the masses to a certain extent, and I thought this is the challenge that I need to tackle. Providing access to education is my specialty, and so providing access to early childhood education to parents using the Montessori method is what Montiplay is.
Amazing. Beautifully explained. And I love the whole story and how, isn't it so interesting how everything, and we realize this when we get to a point we want to be, but every single thing that we did is tiny little, these clues, these crumbs along the path of this is what you're meant to be doing, you're on the right track. And it doesn't necessarily, we know we want to make a difference, but we're not sure of the whole. What's that great Martin Luther King quote? You don't need to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. And so, yeah, all of your career, and as you said, just you're growing up as an Arab in Europe, that experience and overcoming prejudice. And I know we've spoken before about not wanting to speak Arabic in public because that was, you know, something not to be proud of. And that's something that I know with Layla, you're really proud of doing that and recognize the importance of your cultural heritage to her. So it's really interesting that the foundation was laid, and here we are with Montiplay.
Yes, absolutely. So now with Montiplay, we're really hoping to bring the beauty of Montessori into every home with the correct information on the mobile application that walks parents step by step towards the Montessori method. So here's to hopefully accomplishing both our missions, bringing the joy of Montessori to the world.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So eloquently put. So shall we begin with our questions?
Absolutely.
Are we all ready? I think our audience is ready. So let's begin with question one, which is, what does Montessori mean to you?
It's a beautiful question because it really makes us reflect on our experience with Montessori and our journey. Montessori to me is relearning everything in life, but more correctly and more clearly this time. It is the manual to building and creating and maintaining relationships. It's the manual to communicating our emotions proactively. It's the manual to taking care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, taking care of others,
So
taking
true.
care of the environment. And ultimately, Montessori to me means leading a balanced life where I am confident and lead a life with purposefulness enough that I become a prepared adult that is able to then raise and enable and empower a smaller human being, the smaller human being in my life. And this not only applies to all the soft skills, but also to the academic parts. It's relearning how we learn language. It's relearning how we learn mathematics, relearning how we learn science. It's just every aspect of Montessori to me is relearning things more correctly and being confident enough with this methodology that is science-backed and time-tested to be able to provide it to my child. That is Montessori to me.
That's wonderful. I love, I agree that it's this process of relearning everything. I feel like when that sort of me, I was in this cardboard box, all of me was in this cardboard box. And then 10 years ago, when I became a Montessori educator, it was like myself as the cardboard box was sort of emptied out onto the floor. And then I had to put everything back in the cardboard box in the right order. And as you say, relearn everything. And it really does feel like that. And Dr. Montessori speaks so much about the spiritual preparation of the adult, and the more we travel on the Montessori path and the parenting path, I think it just becomes apparent with every passing minute, hour, day, year into parenting and as a Montessorian that the spiritual preparation, that our spiritual preparation is really, really what matters, because we can be anywhere in the world and be a Montessorian and practice peace education at its core. This we can do, yeah.
Absolutely. It makes so much sense to work on ourselves, to be prepared adults in Montessori, to apply all the Montessori principles to ourselves before we attempt to apply Montessori to our children. So it really is a personal journey for the adult before it is something that can be applied as a parent.
Very much so. Beautiful. So, question 2. This is one of my favorite questions, along with the other favorite 10 questions. Question 2 is, what was your first light bulb moment on your Montessori journey?
So I have two, if I'm allowed to have two.
You can have two.
The first one was when my daughter was about 4 months and started becoming more aware. She was always aware, but in my mind, seeing her awake more hours of the day, I started my research journey, as in what can I do during those hours? How can I most effectively or most supportively acknowledge her development? And when I started reading the books, my first light bulb moment is that I could have started Montessori from birth or from conception. That was my light bulb moment. I thought Montessori is like a preschool. So I had my own prejudices and preconceptions, and Montessori is 3 years onwards. And so that was my first light bulb moment, as in conception. I missed out. And how? And then that was my first light bulb moment, that you could actually start practicing Montessori from conception as a parent. And Montessori, even before you become a parent, I believe, or before conception, even as a single adult who wants to become prepared, they could practice some of the Montessori principles. And so there is no time, really, even if the children are older. There's no time for Montessori. It can be applied at any point in time. And I would say my second light bulb moment was reading all about Montessori. I realized that it all comes down to putting ourselves in the place of the child, putting ourselves in their shoes, just looking at the world around us from the child's perspective. And that, to me, as common sense as it is, the golden rule of life: treat others the way you would like to be treated. So put yourself in other people's shoes. We don't seem to be doing with our own children or with a child in our lives, just looking at the world really from their perspective. And that was, I guess, a light bulb moment in Montessori.
Big shift that happens internally when we suddenly see the world through the child's eyes. Beautiful. So, question 3, please, Aziza. In what ways does Montessori enrich the work that you do?
Uh, Montessori is enriching for sure. I would say, for the most part, Montessori provided me with the confidence that I lacked, and maybe what I noticed from most moms around me in the mothers community, we lack the confidence that we need. We lack the confidence that we're doing the right thing, and where we're doing right by our children. And so with Montessori, I believe that I have gained some confidence in the way that I parent. It has given me the self love that I needed to go on the parenting journey. I think for me, following a method, a lifestyle that is science backed, it's time tested. It's just endured and survived and proven itself over and over again. It really has given me that confidence that I needed in my work and in my life.
So wonderful. And you know, every guest I speak to on the podcast series says the same, in that the key is giving parents almost permission to trust their inner wisdom, because we all have all the answers we need inside ourselves. And every guest has said the same thing in a slightly different way. But our work is to say to parents, so you know this, you can trust yourself. Your instincts are there. Sort of block out the noise of the outside world, but you know this because you observe your child, you spend hours with them, and Dr. That's what I love about Dr. Montessori's work. She said, you know, anyone can do this, just observe your child, look at your child. And so all of us have this knowledge, and it's just our work to find the right key for the lock for parents, I think. Yeah, that really resonates. So question 4, oh, this is a really good one. When was the first time a child taught you something about yourself that you weren't aware of? And that can be from a direct interaction or from just observing them and you noticed a reaction in yourself.
And so you've touched on this in your introduction because you know me so well, and this is what I love about our friendship. The first moment when Layla taught me something about myself that I didn't know, and I was only able to realize this because of Montessori, really self-reflecting, was when she started forming words, and I wanted to enrich her language and practice with her as much as possible. And I had to decide on our language of communication, which has always been Arabic at home. And the first time I observed something about myself because of Montessori with Layla is that I tended to switch to English when we're outside of our home. And it made me reflect and try to evaluate as to why that is the case. Why do we try and speak a language in front of others, try to perfect it with its accent, and try to show that we are equal or at par with the outside world, not to feel like I was a second-class citizen the way I did in Europe as a child growing up. It's the feeling embarrassed of speaking Arabic or of maintaining our culture. So that was the first moment of realization, switching languages with my child, knowing that I should be speaking only one with her to ensure that it develops. Um, and so this moment of realization really made me reflect on the adult I want to be around my child and the confidence that I need to have in myself for her to be able to have that confidence in herself as a child and when she grows into an adult. And in this way, among the many ways, Montessori is very powerful. in that respect, and making us realize um, the shortcomings that we have today because of certain events in our childhood, and then how we can go about growing uh, or healing our inner child, so that we don't project these shortcomings or these feelings of insecurity to our children.
Our wounds, yeah. I don't like to call them shortcomings. I'm, me and radical self-compassion. It's our wounds.
And as you can see, it's still a journey. So
Yeah,
think of it as my lack of confidence as a shortcoming
yeah,
rather than wound is still an ongoing journey.
yeah.
I still haven't healed the wound. It's an ongoing process.
I think thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably about that, and it's something that resonates with every Arab family I work with here, with the friends. We're lucky enough in Dubai to have a huge range of friends from different backgrounds, which is so incredibly enriching for Olivia and Harry. And I love Dubai for many reasons, but this, I mean, in Olivia's elementary, there's 10 children with 8 different nationalities. I mean, that is mind-blowing in itself. It's really so incredible. But it's something that I hear a lot from the Arab world, that this trying to place English higher on the scale than the richness of your culture and language and heritage. And this is something that we're talking about a lot in depth with Trisha Mokina, who's an Indigenous educator, who's also on the series as well. And there's a lot of parallels that you and her have in terms of this and healing those wounds so you can celebrate all that you are. Yeah. Thank you so much, Aziza. That was really beautiful. Question 5. When was the last time a child taught you something about yourself that you didn't know already?
Um, this is a very also a question that invites a lot of reflection. I recently enrolled for an AMI certification, and the prerequisite is the many hours of observation that we have to spend in a classroom. And as part of my observation with children that were not my own, sitting in a Montessori environment, observing children, I would say my realization was that we all come with a lot of prejudices and judgments and some preconceptions that we form for one way or another. And our role as prepared adults, and any adult in Montessori needs to be able to rid themselves of these prejudices, of these judgments, and to be able to practice observing as objectively as possible. And so the last realization I had is that as adults, we all carry some sort of prejudices, whether they come from our families or our upbringing, or the stories we're told as children about others. And that we all need to, not only as Montessorians, all adults and humanity, rid ourselves of prejudices and walk into any environment and any setting with a complete blank sheet, welcoming others. And this, of course, includes children. And so that was my last learning, the practice of objectivity, being as objective as possible, and observing with an open mind and an open heart.
I love that. Observing with an open mind and an open heart. It's beautiful. So, question 6. This is the really big one. Or no, question 6 and 7. Question 6 is, when was the last time a child caught you out of integrity and questioned you on it? And, not necessarily, Layla isn't as fluent as my 6-year-old is in calling me out on my integrity, but I'm sure she has her way of calling you out.
And so this is where we are a work in progress as well, even as myself who is on a journey with Montessori, or trying to apply the lifestyle into our home. I know that we should never be dishonest with our children. And of course, honesty is one of the core principles and values that we try to to hope and harness in our children. However, when we want to leave the house, and Layla's not quite ready yet, and she's always not quite ready yet because there's always something interesting to do, I would say, if by the time our sand timer, the sand is in the bottom, and you still don't have your shoes on, then mommy really has to leave. And so if Layla wants to be with her, then she's got to get dressed, and and things that are not quite as aligned with the Montessori principles that we try to teach. Because I would, I'm not leaving without her, for sure. But I wouldn't say it as a threat, as in, mommy's going to leave you alone or at home. But I would say, mommy really needs to go to take Layla out, or whatever it is where we're going. And if Layla needs to come, and she really, if she wants to come along, and she'll always say come along. But then she looks at me and she knows that you're not really leaving without me. You're not going anywhere. So she calls me out on that. She calls me out on, I know you're not serious about this. And it makes me realize every single time that we need to try and be as honest with our children as possible, or not, as just plain honest, and say, I'm not leaving without you. I'm right here. I would really love if you could get dressed so that we can get to school on time. And with, as you would know, with a piccolini, with a 2-year-old, it can get very challenging, because as much as we want to follow the rhythm of the day rather than a strict routine and times and hours and minutes, we want to give them their time. But in the morning, it really comes to a point where I open the door and I'm standing there and I say, Layla, the door is going to close if you don't come, if we don't get there out in time. But she looks at me and she calls me out on that. She knows that mommy's not going anywhere without me. And so this is one of the biggest things, the biggest struggles for me as in becoming a prepared adult, is really practice being fully honest with my child in these moments where we sometimes forget our teachings and switch to the old methods, rather than take a moment and say, what is the better approach, so that my child won't look at me in such a way and call me out on my dishonesty in this situation. So it's the old methods. The trigger brings back the old methods. The trigger being, yes, we really need to be on time. And this is really when we need to take a moment and think, I'm bigger than that. I'm better than that. I don't need to, just go back to these old methods, I would say, for lack of a better term. But realize these triggers. I need to acknowledge them and then switch to my Montessori self, I would say. And so this is it's a work in progress
Yeah.
in our Montessori journey, to realize these triggers, not go to old methods of parenting or what we used to hear, um, and then switch to the more conscious parenting methods, and the Montessori methods of honesty and transparency with our children at all times.
Very true. And thank you for answering that so honestly. The only thing I'd add is more radical self compassion, please, because there's a lot of self flagellation going on there. Because every single person watching this around the world is putting their hand up in their head or actively saying, I've done that as well. So please, more radical self compassion, because it's not possible for all of us to respond from the best part of ourselves, the best version of ourselves, sorry, every single time. And whilst I agree, if we're looking at the conscious parenting method or the Montessori parenting method, the number one thing is our connection. And like, what can we do to elicit cooperation through connection? And, that is if we talk about moving away from that old method, as you say, like the new method, as it were, the tried and tested method by, indigenous peoples for centuries, but the other way of looking at it would be just connection, connection, connection. And as you said, we're bigger, so we can achieve this in a way, but with great big lorry loads of self-compassion, because we're not going to get it right every time. And life happens, and none of us are perfect, so it's okay. Thank you for answering so honestly. And I don't know if this is relevant in your situation, but in question 7, the second part of the question about integrity is, how did you explain yourself? Or just from Layla's look, you said, okay, I understand.
I do. From the way she looks at me, it makes me realize that it it these I wrote the it doesn't work to tell them I'm gonna leave, goodbye, and then it brings out the inconsistency. It gives us lack of credibility, lack of trust later on. And it just, the look in her eyes makes me realize that it's not working. It's like rewards and punishments and the
Yes.
many other things that just don't work. It's not effective. And so looking at her makes me realize that what I'm doing is not effective. And then I just take a deep breath, get down on her level, and say, we really need to leave home right now and put on our shoes so that we can go to school and meet our friends and um, continue our day. And she listens to me, and she knows that I'm not going anywhere without her. But it makes me realize that we need to practice being in control of these moments. And just her look makes me, the way she looks at me, makes me realize how ineffective these methods are. Um, these conditional statements, or yeah.
It's an
And so
uncomfortable place, but a good place for us to be in, because it's the realization. Awareness is the first step, isn't it?
absolutely, and it's amazing how the children remind us, even if we've forgotten, the way they look at us, the way they respond to these very
Yes.
ineffective methods is a reminder for us that it's ineffective.
Yeah.
And so it's very
And as they get
powerful.
older, they call us out verbally as well, because, Olivia or Harry will remind me of something I said the previous day. And then you really are in a tight spot. So particularly with a second plane child whose, sense of moral justice is so strong. So if she feels that something isn't fair, usually she's right, and she's going to call me out on it. So it's really good. As you said at the beginning, it helps us become more of the person we want to become. What it feels
To be better models for them. So right now, she's, with a 2-year-old, it's she gives you that cheeky look. But I'm looking forward to the days where she's verbally she'll
like.
verbally things.
It's quite a thing, I promise you. It's quite a thing.
Such a powerful reminder.
Yeah. So, going back to the beginning, I guess, question 8 is, please, what is your favorite Dr. Montessori quote? I know that's impossible, so maybe at this particular moment in time, as you woke up this morning, what was your favorite Dr. Montessori quote?
So this is a quote that was shared by a common friend of ours, Aya. Because we have these conversations constantly about Montessori, it's the center of our journey. And so out of the many, the latest one is from the depth of his nature, the child repeatedly pardons the adult and strives to flourish despite the latter's repressions.
Oh,
And so,
wow. Which book is that from?
Secret of Childhood, page
Wow.
140.
Say again, page, which one?
I'll send it to you for sure. It's
Yeah,
140,
please.
Secret of Childhood. From the depth of his nature, the child repeatedly pardons the adult and strives to flourish despite the latter's repression.
Oh my goodness.
And it's so powerful in so many ways because it's a relief, and at the same time, it gives you that it's just it takes a lot of weight off of me as a parent, but it's also very heartbreaking that these little humans are they struggle to really make it on their own when we don't provide them the right support. So you can only imagine if we didn't hold them back, what they would be able to accomplish. So with all that we do, that all these ineffective methods that we use on them, with all the um, repression, the child will flourish regardless. They will, as Dr. Maria Montessori puts it, they reincarnate themselves. They will flourish. They will reveal themselves and unfold to be the person that they're meant to be. And so it's powerful in many ways. This quote, it really spoke to me. This is what's been on my mind and in my heart for the past couple of days since Aya shared it with me. And it's one thing that we need to remind ourselves of, or I would love to write this down and have it hung somewhere to have a constant reminder that I should not be the person that's holding her back in any way. I should be the support. And I think in many of the books you read, it's like the scaffolding at a building. So as much as possible to be that source of support for her and not to be the person that's holding her back. So that is, I think, I hope that you find this quote as resonating or as powerful as I do.
Very much so. I think we're going to be releasing a book of Dr. Montessori's favorite quotes, actually, following this series. I've already had a suggestion for a book about the whole Montessori Mission series, so I think definitely a chapter is going to have to be on the favorite quotes. Thank you so much. That's a really powerful and beautiful one. Thank you.
And I want to thank Aya for sharing it with me.
Oh yes, thank you, Aya. Thank you so much, Aya. So question 9, please, is what is your deepest desire for Montessori in the future?
My deepest desire is that Montessori becomes the norm in every household, in every family, in every country, in every nation around the world, that it becomes accessible, which is my mission, and that it becomes the lifestyle that we all follow. So, and most importantly, that the principles and values in Montessori become a norm. especially when it comes to, as you said, peace education, when it comes to letting go of our prejudices and our preconceptions of others. So for us to be a stronger global community, um, we would need to embody these values and principles in our lives. And so democratizing Montessori, so to say,
Yes.
making it accessible and reach every home would, of course, be my true hope and wish for Montessori. And I do believe that we can make that wish come true and that hope come true and realize that goal today, with more people around the world like yourself, and like the many Montessorians we know in our community who are using today's tools and technology, and these new mediums and channels, to be able to reach people globally. It's possible today, and
It's
it takes,
incredible, isn't it? It really is.
yeah, and it takes people like yourself to start these initiatives, to make that happen. So thank you for that and for um,
Pleasure.
part part of the driving force behind spreading the magic of Montessori.
And so I think for question 10, you've sort of already answered it. What do you see your role is in achieving your deepest desire for Montessori?
So definitely, it's providing the accessibility, and in my case, I would stress on providing access to education, or in this case, Montessori, to marginalized communities, to the women and children who are not usually accounted for in these initiatives. So, for example, the workshops that are being held globally for Montessori, the Montessori schools that are available globally, are not at the moment accessible to marginalized communities like refugees, who live in remote areas, who do not have access to a stable internet connection
Yeah.
or electricity, so to say. And so, having worked with these communities for over a decade, my mission would be to provide access to Montessori to marginalized communities. And hopefully, um, I'll be on the route to achieving that with the help of Montiplay and people like yourself.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Aziza. That's really lovely. What a way to finish.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Aziza, so much for joining me for the Montessori Mission. 10 questions, 10 Montessorians, 10 perspectives, 10 communities. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure to hear your answers to questions, to hear your story, how you came to Montessori, and to hear little snippets of life with Layla as well. It's always so gorgeous. I remember so clearly the first time that we met. It was pre-pandemic, wasn't it? 18 months ago, in my old place. Actually, I think it was before I lived here in Greens, and Harry was still at home with me, wasn't he? And Layla was just when she was just sitting, wasn't she? And she was asking if we picked up a lot. And she loved Harry's blonde hair, didn't she?
Um, I still remember that day, and I remember leaving our morning and coming back to my life, to my daily life, completely transformed. I felt like you left an impression on both Layla and I. We were just so calm, and it was just like your inner strength and your that power that you had, just was somewhat absorbed by myself and Layla. That our day after that just was so peaceful, and it was like the struggles of daily life, is that chaos that usually goes on, that running from one task to another. It just came to a standstill. It's just, there was silence and there was peace, And I knew from that moment on that I would love to continue to see you because of the positive impact that you had on me and on Layla and on our Montessori journey, and that you continue to have. So thank you for that. I'm very grateful
Aziza,
to have met you.
beautiful. Thank you so much. That's really wonderful. I don't really know what to say now. Thank you. Other than thank you so much for joining me. And everyone at home, we really hope you've enjoyed this beautiful insight into Monty and Aziza's mission. And Aziza, what would you like to share with the audience that your Instagram handle and all the wonderful projects you're working on at the moment? If you'd like to direct them to your website, what do you have going on at the moment you'd like to our audience to hear about?
Um, First, thank you again for wanting to shed light on these initiatives like Montiplay. I very much appreciate it. So we will add the handle of the Multiplay account to the video. And I wanted to let everyone know who's listening that we're all on a continuous learning journey. And so no matter where you are, you're welcome here. And you will find in us a supporting community, the village that we all need. Um, So it takes a village to raise a child, and I hope that everyone listening will think of the community that you're trying to create as one big village that's here to support us become the parents or humans or adults that we want to be.
Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Thank you for
Thank you.
hosting.
Really beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today. And um, we will pop this as a transcription. You're able to watch this. You're able to listen to this on podcast as well. We're going to be doing a book as well. So I look forward to hearing everyone's feedback and everything and all the richness they've taken from our conversation today. And thank you so much for joining me for the Montessori Mission. And I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks, Aziza. Bye-bye.